Okay, today, guys, we're going to begin a new collection or unit that is based on poetry. Through the entire course up to this moment, we have been dealing exclusively with prose. The first semester, we dealt with fictional prose, and most of this quarter, we've been dealing with non-fictional prose. But as I told you early in the course, literature is more than just prose. Literature has other forms. And in addition to prose, it also includes poetry and drama. Drama is a form of literature that we will be approaching later on in a couple of months. But for the time being, we're going to be giving you an introduction to poetry, and we're going to be looking at poetry from three different angles. We're going to be approaching the imagery of poetry. Later on, we're going to be talking about the figures of speech in poetry, and we're also going to be talking about the sounds of poetry. So, how can we define poetry? Poetry, as we've stated before, is that form of literature, that form of a language that helps express beauty. So, as you can see, when we use poetry with a different intention and different goals than we would have if we are using prose or we're using drama. And poetry is very evocative and has a lot of imagery. So we're going to be talking about the forms and images that we find in poetry. Who would kindly be able to read this? Maybe Ms. Natalia Rosa could read this quotation by J.M. Brin.
An image can be so fresh, so powerful that it can speak to our deepest feelings.
And would you agree with that, madam?
I agree with it.
So do I. You've heard it said before that a picture can say more than 1,000 words. So they are powerful. The funny thing, the thing that we should keep in mind is that when we talk about an image, we're not talking purely about the things that we see, because imagery is more than just what we see. Imagery definitely gives poetry its forcefulness, its power. So poets use it, and they use it in order to share their experiences. They don't just want you to know, like, what happened, like in the mission of nonfiction, which is just to lay out information, right? In this case, poets want you to have an experience when you read a poem, and they create images, and they hope that these images unlock parts of your memory and stir your imagination. And they hope that you can gain insights about what this poem that they wrote means. So, in this lesson, we're going to explore the role that images play in the creation and our understanding of poetry. So, what is imagery? Imagery is something that we have discussed in the past, and imagery is our pictures evoked in poems. It refers to pictures, and I write pictures with quotation marks because it's not just something that we see. These are pictures or images that we perceive in our mind's eyes, our mind's ears, our mind's nose, our mind's tongue, our mind's skin, through which we experience the world created by poetic language. Um, you know that our window to the world is our five senses, right? And they give us information about the world of us in different ways. And when we combine them all, we experience in a very full and real way, in a very immersive way, the world that surrounds us. So that is what poets want to do, but with letters, with words. They want you to experience the world using sensory images, which are words that appeal to the senses. Imagery is a device that can also make a meaning of a poem strong and clear because they are so immersive. Poets use sound words and words of color and words of touch, in addition to figures of speech. We're going to be approaching those different ways to approach poetry this week. And but today we're dealing, of course, with images. Remember that the details that appeal to a reader's senses are used to build up these images. You have already lived long enough in order to have a catalog in your mind of different sensorial experiences. So chances are that when you read a word in a poem, it will evoke one of these images and help you experience something. Most of the image making or sensory words in any language are going to appeal to these five basic human senses that we have discussed in the past. And they are the following. These are going to be coming in the test. When we talk about visual images, we're talking about our sense of sight, which is the one that by far we use the most. When we talk about tactile images, tactile refers to the sense of touch or what we feel. When we talk about auditory images, we're talking about things that we hear or sound. When we talk about gustatory images, we're talking about our sense of taste. And remember that our sense of taste is probably the most limited of all five. When we use our sense of smell, we call those olfactory images. Questions so far, guys?
No.
No.
Okay, so those are, guys, the five senses and the five types of images that we will see in poetry. Visual, tactile, auditory, gustatory, and olfactory, okay? Remember that imagery is part of a poet's style. What does that mean? That some poets are going to be very heavy in imagery, and some are not. Some don't care much about imagery. They will use it, but they will focus on other aspects that we will be exploring this week. But some poets, they just love to paint a large canvas, and they love using evocative language that appeals to the senses. Remember that style is a product of a poet's own way of seeing the world. Every person decides upon what their style is going to be. And remember that style refers to the manner in which a writer addresses a matter in writing. And style is going to reveal a lot of things about the writer's personality or the writer's voice. As a matter of fact, when we talk about voice, we're talking about the distinctive way in which we can identify a writer, and style is a big component of that, okay? And remember that style is composed of the way or the choices that writers make when they create sentence structures, word choices, and figures of thought, among others. So everybody has their own particular style. And the most used rhetorical modes in poetry are specifically narrative and or descriptive. What does that mean? That most of the time, whenever you read a poem, the poet will be either telling a story or the poet is going to be describing something. It could be something tangible, like a horse, or it could be something intangible, like love, right? Love is the quintessential topic of poetry and songs. Now, images can arouse in the reader very deep feelings or emotions. That's the power of images. Any image can genuinely elicit feelings of love or care, safety, gratitude, or feelings of fear, anxiety, resentment, and anger. Guys, when you hear songs, do you feel any of these emotions?
Yeah, depends on obviously what type of song as well. Like you can feel
Yeah,
different
but
emotions from a different type of song, but yes.
the question is, yeah, do they have the ability to make you feel these emotions or
Yeah.
more? Okay, these are just examples of some nice emotions and some emotions that are not too nice, right? But did you know that poems and songs are basically the same thing? The difference between a song and a poem would be basically that you add music with instruments to a song, but when you look at them, they're basically the same. So they both use the rhetorical mode that we just mentioned. They describe things or they can tell stories. Let's try to see a scene now and hear the sounds and feel the feelings evoked in the following poem by poet Carl Sandburg. Let's see if maybe Mr. Marin, could you read this poem titled Lost?
Um,
Okay,
it's loading for me.
before you read it, let me tell you how you read a poem. Um, you make a pause at the end of every line, okay?
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, man.
Lost, desolate and lone, all night long on the lake, where the fog trails and the mist creeps, the whistle of a boat calls and cries unended, unendedly, like some lost child, in tears and trouble, haunting the harbor's breast and the harbor's eaves. Eyes.
Okay,
I
thank you,
can't see
Michael.
the last
Thank you,
the
Mikael.
word.
Okay, so look at the title. It's Lost. And this poem is doing two things. I told you that poems can do two things. So Carl Sandburg, in this very short poem, decided to do two things: to describe and tell a story. What is happening here? Who can tell me what is happening in this poem? Where does it take place?
In the lake,
In a
night,
lake. And does it tell what time of the day it is?
night, all
It's,
night long.
okay, it's nighttime in a lake. Okay. And but it begins with desolate and lone. Does anybody understand the word desolate?
Stranded.
I'm sorry?
Stranded.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, question. How many of you have ever felt this way in your life? Nobody else. Did you ever get lost?
Sure.
Shit.
Uh, you know what? The first time I got lost, I was 4. I remember it very vividly. I was in Macy's in New York. And when I say Macy's, I'm talking about the Macy's, not a Macy's, the Macy's, the original one. And my mom decided to go to Macy's with me. And my mom was doing what mommies do. You know what mommies do when they go to J.C. Penney's or Sears, right? Or Marshall's.
They look around the entire store.
They look around the entire store. You're a funny guy. Well, my mom was in the dress rack, right? And back in that time, the racks were like large and circular. They were not like square and small like today's. They were large and circular. So me being a 4-year-old, bored out of my mind, I decided to start playing with the rack area. You know, I was like jumping inside and out, jumping inside and out. And the dress, I was so small that the dresses were like curtains for me. while my mom was looking through, the rack, looking for dresses or whatever she was looking for. So I'm jumping in and out, jumping in and out. When I finally jump out, she's not there. And what I'm seeing is a bunch of giants walking around me, all these legs passing by me, and my mom is nowhere to be found. The feeling of desolation and loneliness that I felt there, I'll never forget, even at my age, because it was my first experience with those feelings. And it wasn't until a few seconds later that I was like crying and looking for my mommy that I saw her in another rack, and she was none the wiser. She had not realized what I had gone through, the terrible and traumatic experience that I had endured. She was not aware of any of that, but I was so grateful to finally find her that I just wrapped myself around her leg and I didn't let her go. But it was a terrible feeling. So feeling desolate and lonely is something that I think that at one moment or another we have all experienced. Were you ever lost, like at Walmart or something?
Yes.
Sí.
Yeah.
Yes.
Was it as traumatic for you as it was for me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yo
I mean,
tenía
they didn't give a code Adam with you, did they? You know what code Adam is, right?
No.
That's when they think that they kidnap a child, they lock down the store.
Me too. I mean,
It happened with you.
yeah.
Tell us about it. Tell us about it.
So it was like for the time of the hurricane, que estaba como que todo el mundo so like de esto.
Pero tú eres una manganzona, yeah? You're not small.
I know.
What happened?
So I was like, my dad was like talking with someone, and I was like, he was like talking too much. So I was like, let me go. And me fui y entonces escucho el call de Walmart cuando dejaron la puerta. Pero me consiguieron.
Because of you?
Obviamente.
My God, talk about being overprotective, huh? That's funny. But this feeling is a very, very powerful feeling. It's very overwhelming. So it's the first word that it uses here in this poem. And on top of it being desolate, it's night and it's in a lake. What else do we have here? It talks about fog. Have you ever been inside of fog? Fogs can be very mysterious, right? And it talks about the mist creeping, like if it were alive. And then we hear something right in the middle of the poem. What do we hear, Tyler?
the whistle of a boat.
The whistle of a boat, and it compares it with what? Anybody else can answer. It doesn't have to only
Like
and
lost
cries.
child.
with the calls and cries of a lost child. That's the whistle of a boat. It's being compared here with cries and calls of a lost child that is in tears and trouble because he feels that he's what?
Lost.
Lost, like desolate and lonely. And it says that as he cries, he's hunting for what?
Harbor rest.
What's a harbor? Anybody? What's a harbor? A harbor is where the ships dock, right? It's where the ships can dock and where they park. Well, it's looking for the harbor's breast. What does that mean? Because harbors don't have a breast. When we talk about breasts are associated with who? Breasts are usually associated with who?
Chicken.
With who?
Chicken.
No, sir. No. Remember, we have the image here of a child that is lost. So he's not looking for some KFC. When a child is lost, a child is looking for who?
Or his mother.
When we talk about the breast is associated to who?
La ripa. La mama.
Oh, come on, man. You don't use that word. Your mom.
Mama.
Your mom. Her breast, her butt. You can use the word bosom. It's a place of great comfort, and it's a place where, when you're a baby, I mean, you snuggle there. And some of you that are not babies, I'm sure that you snuggle there. How many of you snuggle with mom? But it's a very typical thing. So any child, when he wants comfort, he usually finds that comfort or that refuge where? In his mother's breast. So that's a safe place for a baby. That's the safest place in the whole universe. So it's comparing the harbor to who?
The woman.
To a mother. To a mother. It's comparing the ship, the boat, to a child, and the harbor to the breast of his mother. So it's a very powerful image that is being displayed here. What is basically going on here is just a boat trying to find its way to the harbor in the middle of the darkness and the mist. But the poet, like any artist, they see beyond the obvious. They see beyond what is in front of their eyes, and they see more. That's what makes an artist, right? That's what makes a singer, a painter, or a writer, or a poet. They see beyond the obvious. So for him, such a simple thing as a boat trying to dock in the middle of the darkness and the mist was like a child looking to the darkness and the mist for his mother. And there's a lot of use here of different sensorial images and also a figurative language. So that's how poems works, guys. For this lesson, you have an assessment where you're going to be answering these 5 questions, and this needs to be uploaded to the LMS. And that's all I have to say about images in poetry today. Any question, guys?
No.
Okay. So in our next lesson, we're going to be exploring figures of speech and how they work in poetry. And we're going to be then on Friday, we're not getting together, but I'm going to post a lesson on the sounds of poetry, and we're going to be discussing that next week, okay? So guys, it was great being here with you. You all take care.